Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
That's right, you heard the man. I'm Bob Hickey, your host. Welcome to another great episode of Foxborough Central. Why don't you grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit on down, and join me as we learn about the people and things and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. I'm joined today by my new friend and our fire chief, Roger Hatfield. How are you doing, sir?
Good to have you. Thanks for having me here, Bob.
Roger Hatfield, we are here today to talk about the Foxborough Citizens Corps.
It's a good organization.
Isn't it? What on earth is the Foxborough? I've lived in Foxborough now for quite a while, and I cannot remember the Foxborough Citizens Corps.
Well, probably because it wasn't around in that title, but it's always been around in regards to our volunteers. It used to be known as Foxborough Emergency Management Agency, or it's known as the old FEMA.
The old local FEMA, which is not the national FEMA.
And it's not the national FEMA, but it's still the great and same folks that have always assisted folks like Chief O'Leary and myself, and the town in general, when we have some type of emergency that we need some assistance and some support from our volunteers.
And we have had a few emergencies of late with hurricanes and storms with power outages. So
Mother Nature has definitely been somebody that we've always watched and tried to make sure that we have respect for.
And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the Foxborough Citizens Corps and how it can help and how it assists folks in town during these natural events.
Yeah, as most folks in the community know, and most of our residents, whenever we've had in the last 2 years our power outages that have lasted 4 and 5 days, we start having to focus on how to support those folks, especially if we have no heat, and getting them the appropriate resources necessary to take care of them. And there's only so much we can do with the resources that we have in the town of Foxborough, being public safety. And when you look at not just the police and fire, you're talking about the health department, you're talking about the Council on Aging, you're talking about our Veterans Affairs, and those folks have needs, and those departments come out, the Pauline Cliffords and the Vicki Lowe's and the Mike Johns come out and they assist us in organizing our volunteers so that we can assist our community and assist our residents. And that's where Citizens Corps helps us organize those volunteers and do it in a manner that fits the federal model.
Okay, so what we're doing, this isn't just in a fire department thing, this is a town-wide emergency response team.
Absolutely.
And it's made up just of town employees?
Well, again, it's made up of town employees, but it's really, when you're talking about Citizens Corps, it's built up about the volunteers. The volunteers, when you're dealing with a crisis, can't just jump into action like Superman and know what to do. By being organized and having some type of structure, they get the training, they get the understanding of how they fit into the system and what their responsibilities are. And that's what Citizens Corps is all about. Give them the resources.
So the citizens make up the Citizens Corps.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. So Foxborough Citizens Corps is primarily a function of volunteers with support and coordination through the management team, yourself. So who on the citizen side right now is the coordinator?
Well, of course, our Lauren Petard that works heavily here, the unsung hero.
Lauren Bitar is the Uber volunteer, and she, of course, is also part of the Foxborough Cable Access family.
Yeah, and she right now helps coordinate not just one section, but 2 sections of our Citizens Corps. I have her right now being kind of the chairman of the actual Foxborough Citizens Corps, and trying to structure that council that we need to have in play so that we can go to the next level. She also works very, very closely with Pauline Clifford on the Medical Reserve Corps. That's the MRC that you hear about quite a bit. Right now, out of Citizens Corps activities throughout the whole region and really the state and in general, the MRC has taken a huge role and are very organized in a regional sense and in a state level sense. And we're starting to get ourselves organized in a local sense here through the Department of Health, Pauline Clifford, and Lauren's, hard work.
Okay, so the Medical Reserve Corps then is
one branch
of this Foxborough Citizens Corps. And I keep looking at my notes, so I apologize to everybody,
Exactly.
but I've got a lot of titles here, and I want to make sure that we get the good information out there in the correct order.
But in the federal government, they've got a special book with all their acronyms.
Yes.
Well, MRC, then you're going to hear CC, that's being basically your Citizens Corps.
Okay.
And then you've got you got one that we will work on in the future that we've also started already getting a lot of volunteers wanting to do, would be your CERT. That's your Citizens Emergency Response Team. So there's another acronym.
Interesting. Okay.
But all of these are under the umbrella of your Foxborough Citizens Corps that is managed and overseen by your council. The council, and folks that play a factor in that already that are volunteers is, of course, Lauren, but the Mitchell family.
Mm-hmm.
They have, as we all know.
Chris and Paula Mitchell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great community folks.
And they fit into this model really well. With their son going to West Point, they kind of understand that structure thing.
Yes.
And so that's the type of folks that you're seeing in there. You've got also, Dick Wright that does a lot of the amateur radio stuff.
Yes.
And these people are just great resources for all of us here in Foxborough, and they're all really, heavily involved in volunteerism.
So say I'm a guy who's in town, and I think I might have some time and some interest in being part of the solution for emergency response. How do I get involved? What do I do?
Well, I'm happy you asked that, because really...
Well, I'm happy you're here to answer the question.
The biggest thing is that we've been doing reach out for the last 2 years on this, and it's kind of funny. It goes in waves, as you can just imagine. When we hit a crisis or some type of situation, the volunteers kind of come out of the woodwork, and that's good.
Well, awareness, creates, and people say, well, why didn't somebody do something? And then, the obvious answer is, well, feel free to join in and we'll do something together.
Right. And we've been reaching out, and they can get through, they can actually go to the website. We actually have a website. It is affiliated with the health department because of MRC right now.
Okay.
And they can go on there, they can register, we have 2 classes coming up, one on April 1st and one on April 8th that we'll talk about
So the
later.
classes on April 1st and April 8th are for which branch of?
All the volunteers.
For everything.
It's for the Citizens Corps Council because they need this as a baseline educational point. And that's the big point. That's what, when the federal government came out with Citizens Corps, it was about organizing them and giving them the appropriate training necessary so that they can be an asset to the emergency services. And so, just use an example. Say we have a situation where we need a health issue, and we need to set up a dispensing site. Well, we don't have enough resources just to manage a dispensing site on our own.
Right.
That's where volunteers play a factor. This education allows them to know what their roles are. And so we start off with stuff like incident management so that they know what's the management structure.
Sure.
And then we go even to the next level when we talk about the actual incident itself, and we talk about ICS. And that's a management structure for dealing with an emergency. And that's the type of education that these folks start off with. That's a blanket type of level of training. And we go from there.
And you raise an excellent point in that training is so critical to the execution of any event or any crisis management. And the last thing you have the time for during a crisis or during an event is training. I love the volunteer. It's great. Power goes out after the third day. I show up at your doorstep, say, hey, I'm Bob, I can help out. That's probably it's not that you ever turn away volunteers, but it's probably the wrong time for you to be able to spend 2 hours with me and explain, all right, Bob, this is what we want you to do. This is how we want you to do it. These are the criteria in which you're going to make an assessment, and this is what you're going to. That's not the time to do it. So the time is now at the training on April 1st and April 8th to get involved. So anybody who might have a thought that this is something that they'd be interested in, because we all want to give back to our community, and this is a great way to do that and to make a true difference at a time of crisis.
Exactly. And volunteers, I don't want to take away from one thing. I always want to encourage neighbors check on neighbors. That's one of our models that we use here. But when we are going to the Citizens Corps level of volunteerism, it's about getting organized, managing a shelter, working at a dispensing site, We have a lost child in the woods and we're organizing ourselves for a search. Those are the type of things that volunteers play a huge factor in. And that's what the training's all about. Neighbors checking on neighbors, that's just normal life. Some of the other things that we've worked real hard on, and people have probably already seen this, is that the health department, along with the Council on Aging, the police department, the fire department, we came up with this emergency preparedness handbook for our residents. It's an outstanding resource that has the first few pages talking about putting your personal contact information in there so that you, in the middle of an emergency, you don't go, where did I leave that?
Right.
It's something that's organized, it's structured. It talks about how a resident can actually take care of themselves for the first 48 to 72 hours in regards to sheltering in place, resources that you should have in your house for the first 72 hours. Because a lot of times when we lose power, people think, oh, I need to know where the shelter is. We have at least a minimum of 48 to 72 hours after the power's gone out before we really have to have people move.
Right.
Does not mean it's dark, it's not going to get a little cold and it's going to be dark, but really honestly people should be able to help themselves while we're organizing and getting the resources ready to take care of the,
Because I would imagine that it also takes time just to truly assess the crisis itself. If the power goes out and the power's going to come on in 5 hours, that's not an emergency.
Right.
Just leave your refrigerator shut and you should be all set.
We always work really closely, the police chief, myself, along with the town manager to do damage assessments, the highway and the public works director, we all work together. It all depends on what the crisis is. If it's a health issue, we work I work very closely with Pauline. We do a damage assessment, try to determine exactly what's the true impact, and then that's how we react. We don't always okay, it's this type of emergency, this is what we're going to do. You have to do your damage assessment. You have to really realize what the true impacts are, and then you activate the resources as necessary to deal with that crisis.
And this is a planned response, so from your standpoint and from the health department and from the senior center and agency of social services and the veterans agent, there are certain roles and certain tasks that then fall into play, and then that's coordinated through Lauren Bertar, who's the coordinator, the volunteer coordinator for the Foxborough Citizens Corps, and then the other volunteers get involved also in a stepped response, if you will. But the first step, of course, is to get the training and get involved. And you had mentioned earlier about the website, and Lauren Bertar, who's also producing today's episode, as says she's part of the Foxborough Cable Access family. She helpfully wrote it down for me. If you were to log into www.foxboroughcitizenscorps.org, and that's spelled the old way, the good way, Foxborough Citizen Corps, CORPS.org. And I know that name will appear on the screen at some point also. But for those who can't remember that, they can also log into the town website.
Right.
Go to Board of Health, and there's a link, a direct link off of their website also. So
exactly.
It's easy to find if you wanted to get involved. So how does one register for the April 1st and the April 8th training? Do you have to go to both trainings?
You can go to one or both.
So it's an either or. So on
and
April 1st.
You can either go right through the health department or just show up that night.
Okay.
It's going to be at the McGinty room. I want to say it's
at
6
the public
o'clock.
safety room.
Yep.
Okay.
I want to say it's 6 o'clock. It is. It's take that back. 6:30.
6:30.
And just show up. If you're not able to make it to the and fill out the forms, just show up that day. We'd love to have them.
So there is pre-registration, but you can also show up at that time.
I do, please. Yeah.
The question now is, so if I show up at this training, am I absolutely committed to doing everything in the case of an emergency?
No. You're only, being a volunteer is exactly that. You're a volunteer. You might only have a desire to be part of Medical Reserve Corps. That's the only focus point. You might say, okay, I really don't want to do that, but I want to be able to help. You might want to just be part of the Citizens Corps. That means that you will maybe be helping fill out forms at a dispensing site. Okay. I might be just helping people go from point A to point B at a shelter.
You bring up there's many ways to volunteer.
Right.
There's and it just occurred to me, there's got to be a huge paperwork need for documentation, for coordination, and then basic transportation as well. So people who are able to transport should get involved also.
Exactly.
And people who maybe want to participate but don't know, if they have the physical strength or there's still a role.
There's always a role, and that's what it's all about. With volunteers, there's always a place for you. There's always a need for you. You might not get activated every single time, but at least if there's something that's a large crisis for this very small bedroom community, we'll utilize you. Mm-hmm. And we depend on our community to take care of our community, and that's what it's really all about.
And that's one of the things that we as citizens count upon. You and the other managers in town, is to be able to have these plans in place and have the infrastructure in place, so that way when something does happen, there's a response.
And and I think you're bringing up a point that a lot of folks think that, well, Chief Hatfield's our emergency management director.
Just snap a finger and boom.
And he's going to make everything go away. And it's not,
the easy button, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not all about me. We have a really good team here. Everything from the folks that I've already mentioned, the Vicky Lowe's, the John, Mike Johns, the Pauline Cliffords, the Chief O'Leary's, the Kevin Pecos. You even go, the Chief O'Leary's, but you also go even the next level. The deputy chiefs, Chief Steve Bagley, my deputy. We all play a role. It's not one person. It's a team effect. The volunteers, the Citizens Corps is part of that team, and that's the real answer. It's not just one person, and
so to make it work, it is the town coming together.
Absolutely, even the Board of Selectmen play a huge factor in it, because they end up being that conduit of education, but really the communication.
And that communication, and I'll take as an example the last storm we had. Foxborough Cable Access, our executive director, was a key, because I think the normal communication methods had failed with the telephones working, but many of us don't have landlines now. Right. And so were they tuned in to social media, the Facebook feeds and the Twitter that was coming out of Foxborough Cable Access, and Michael Weber attending your briefings?
Well, Mike Weber, and this is a plug, a very positive plug towards Foxborough Cable.
I'm never against that, by the way.
There you go. I got to be honest with you. Even when I was in the city of Nashville, I never had such a structure of public information getting out through a variety of different resources. You just brought up the media of the metro media, I call it.
Yes.
But we also still now have the AM radio back up and running. And for those that don't know about it, I have not my glasses on, but it's 1320 AM.
AM 1320 on your radio dial.
Yeah, and Bill Katzberger has been working with the high school and folks to get an FM radio station back up and running. So
that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so basically every type of media, informational networking that we have been able to use, we use. Because as you know, when we lost power 2 out of the 3 storms, we lost cable.
Yes.
So you have to.
Because we put it up on our cable screens, and for people who have computers out of town, they knew exactly what was going on. The people in town,
did not.
Right.
So we had to reach out to those other networks and those other systems that we had in play. So it's all good.
Because we have a very robust website, www.fcatv.org, and all the announcements are, of course, posted. And for folks who have their iPods and iMacs, and I don't even know what these things are.
These fancy
I don't
phones.
have any. So I don't have any of that stuff. My family does, but I'm the dinosaur. The important thing is that the information comes out, but also there is something to communicate, and that's what you're talking about with the Foxborough Citizen Corps, and why it's so important that people get involved with the trainings on either April 1st or April 8th. At the McGinty Room, starting at 6:30 p.m., and it runs for about 3 hours.
Right.
And it's a great way to find out about all the different arms. And you mentioned the medical
Reserve Corps.
Reserve Corps. Now, the Medical Reserve Corps, what is their primary function?
Again, it's kind of goes with the word. Their function is medical
Do you have
services.
to be a doctor to volunteer?
No, you don't. You don't even have to be a nurse.
Okay.
You don't even have to know how to do CPR. It's just knowing that when we do a dispensing site, it could be for everything from a different strand of flu coming out to SARS again, all of these different little things.
Interesting.
And it's just knowing that when we set up a dispensing site, there's a variety of different components that need to be filled out by a person. And we've done some drills, and the drills have really worked out well for us because we always learn. We also try to always kill two birds with one stone. Like if we know that we have to do a really large size flu clinic, we'll set it up just like a normal dispensing site.
So you can
so we're training ourselves at the same time as we're utilizing it for a real need. And so that plays a factor. The future CERT, Citizens Emergency Response Team, will be those that can help us, both public safety being fire and police, in dealing with any type of search, any type of night watch.
We have had things, we have had incidents where people have gotten lost. I remember it was about a decade ago, but there was a situation where somebody got lost in the state forest up around the reservoir.
Yeah, and if they're organized and they're trained right, they would be an asset to us all. Because again, the biggest thing is that...
And that's a whole different set of volunteer skills.
Exactly.
People, not even necessarily with search and rescue dogs, but people who are trained...
Amateur radio.
Yeah.
All of those folks that sit under that CERT component. Because again, they support the operations in that way.
So there's a lot of... not that a crisis is ever a cool event, but there are a lot of cool ways that people with different skills can get involved.
Exactly.
So then there's a third arm of the Foxborough Citizens Corps called the Citizen Corps.
The Citizens Corps Council is
Citizens Corps Council, sorry.
Right, exactly. The council is very, very important because that is the group that focuses on the organization of all the volunteers. That's where I'm really striving to get more support for Lauren and others that are already established on that council, so that we can get the complete council up and running. Because here's the big thing. Why did we make the big switch from the old Foxborough Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to Foxborough Citizens Corps? It follows a federal model, that then also comes with federal assistance. So that once we get the council up and running, and we're already identified as Foxborough Citizens Corps by the Commonwealth and by the federal government.
Okay.
Once we get the Citizens Corps Council and we have, an actual structure, we can then start applying for grants that will allow us to get more training, to get them equipment, to support them, and really get us to the next level.
So that's a key component is in getting the training and the infrastructure in place is the organization of the administration and being in compliance with federal guidelines to make us eligible to fund the emergency response.
Exactly.
So that's a very well thought out approach. How'd you get to be so smart?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, I call it my first life. When I was in the city of Nashville, we had a very active Citizens Corps for the city of Nashville, a little bit bigger community, and we were very, very successful. We had over 100 people in our MRC. I probably had somewhere around 60 in the CERT, and we got a lot of federal grants, a lot of federal assistance, because we were organized and structured, and that's where I really see that happening here.
So you're bringing your experience of a successful program, you're bringing it to Foxborough, which is another great reason why you're a super resource for the citizens here, because what you're doing is you're bringing in a winning model and you're plopping it into our little community and making it so that we're going to be successful and successfully able to deal with an emergency should one come up. And they always do come up.
That's true, they do. It's been a long process. It's been a slow process. And it's taken me longer than I thought it would. But you
have other responsibilities, though.
Well, we have a lot of responsibilities, everybody in this town. So as long as we take a few steps forward every few months, every year, I feel at least we're going to reach that point sooner or later. And it's the volunteers like Lauren and those that have have made it a little easier for me to stomach how slow we've gone.
Well,
I get a little frustrated sometimes, but they work hard.
A successful person always does get frustrated by the speed with which success happens, so good for you. So you keep talking about the volunteers, and we're going to talk about it right now. People who want to volunteer can also get involved not only by logging onto your website at foxboroughcitizencorps.org, but they can also call the Board of Health at Town Hall at 543-1207. And Pauline Clifford is doing the training along with Lauren Bitar?
Pauline is a huge asset. Again, she has done a lot of the training. Our
health agent, by the way.
Yeah, she's done a lot of the training already. She is really helped keep the glue to all of this. And that's why the MRC has still played a bigger factor. As I said earlier, they're really already organized in the region. And so Pauline goes to a lot of the meetings with Lauren, and it's really been pushing that piece. That's why it's the kind of the leading part of all of it, but it's just still one branch underneath the umbrella.
So with Pauline and Lauren and the training coming up on April 1st and April 8th, that's why it's great that this program is on the air now, so that way you folks at home can, activate yourselves right now and become involved. You can call the Board of Health at 543-1207. I'm sorry, I should say 508-543-1207. You know what I mean. But they can also go on to your www.facebook.com. At your Facebook page, you have one. It's called FoxCC.
Lauren has one. She's done a great job with all of those medias. And yes, you can go right on there. And I'm sure, again, you can be a friend or something like that and stay in contact.
So if you friend onto the Facebook page, it's FoxCC for Foxborough Citizens Corps.
Right.
Excellent. And I guess there's also Twitter?
I guess so. Again, I'm showing my age here. I don't tweet too well. But all of them of the communities are getting into it. I mean,
so the communities across Massachusetts, it's a similar model, or at least it's a similar intent. And you said it's federally, not mandated, but federally regulated, funded?
In regards to what? The community?
Well, as far as what the structure is, what the Citizen Corps model is.
Yeah, and that's definitely a federal model.
Okay.
And
if we comply with the federal model, then there's funding available to further the mission. You can apply.
Exactly.
Interesting. And part of the council's role is to make sure that we're in compliance with the federal model.
Right.
And then
they have bylaws. They have bylaws that they set a regimen of meetings, a regimen of training, and that they show that they are being proactively involved in the community.
That's great. And with that, I don't want to say it's an easy step because it's probably the most difficult step, but getting a culture of volunteerism funneled into this model, because Foxborough does have a strong volunteer base, and you can see it through the many organizations, through youth sports, through Lions, JCs. You can see it through all the different, when there's a Hurricane Sandy relief effort, people have the ability here in town to understand that sense of community and to come together and to make a difference. So this is a key piece as far as planning to make a difference when something happens.
Right, and I think that you're bringing up a very, very valid point. Our folks in this community are involved in so many things. You're probably saying, well, how can I fit another thing on my plate? Once they get the initial training and they start to really kind of be in tune to what's going on, it's not a huge commitment. It's just a matter of get you organized, get them the structure there, and then it's just keeping involved a little bit. It's not going to overflow your plate.
It's because it's a matter of activation, I would imagine.
Right.
It's not something where I have to attend a certain meeting 2 hours every week and maintain my certification. It's a little bit less of a responsibility, more knowing what your role is.
Exactly.
And being identified as a person who's going to fill a role.
And that role might change. When you start to get involved, you're going to pick and choose what you want to be involved in and how you can be a resource or an asset to us. It's not going to be dictated to you, but all it's going to do, really honestly, is allow you to be under the structure, educated enough to know when you should do something and when you shouldn't do something, so that you don't no longer become a threat of being, injured or being I kind of call it a freelancer, and causing us to have now, instead of a few victims, more victims, because you try to do something without being organized.
With best intentions.
Right.
So the ultimate best intention is to get involved now with the Foxborough Citizens Corps. Time has flown, Chief Hatfield, and I want to thank you so much. What I'm going to say to folks at home is now's the time to get involved for a future event. If there's going to be an emergency 2 years from now, who's going to respond? Hopefully it's you. And the way to do that is to get involved now by participating in one of the training sessions coming up. They're going to be held at the McGinty Room at the Public Safety Building on April 1st or April 8th. Go to one or the other at 6:30 p.m. You can register by contacting the Foxborough Board of Health at area code 508-543-1207 or by logging on to their website and finding out information. You can do that by going to Foxborough Citizens Corps. I'm not going to bother reading that one out again because it's on the screen, but you can also get to them by going into the Town of Foxborough website and going to the Board of Health. There's a link from there. You can also check out their Twitter or Facebook page at FoxCC. I'm Bob Hickey, your host. Thank you for taking a half hour to join me and my guest, Roger Hatfield, Chief of our Fire Department and also Coordinator of our Citizens Corps. Great to have him in here, and we hope to have you come out and volunteer with the Foxborough Citizens Corps. If you'd like more information about that or any other of our Foxborough Central programs, log on to our website at www.fcatv.org or come by our studios, check us out. How about volunteering for us as well? You can do that by stopping in our studios at 28 Central Street or giving us a call at 508-543-4757. And finally, if you or an organization you're part of here in this beautiful town want to be focused, featured, or talked about on a future episode of Foxborough Central, come on down to the studio or contact Michael Weber, our Executive Director, again at 508-543-4757. I'm Bob Hickey. Thank you, Foxborough, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.